Okay, good morning. Hope all are well. That, that. Morning, one line. Morning, Mojo. I would be lying if I said I had done anything yesterday other than relax. So after stream, I did not do any more on this. I am making sure I'm taking the time to reflect on what I'm doing though and why I'm doing it. And am I doing it because, someone was like, hey, you're using this technique, and now I'm labeling it as something that I'm going down that path, right? I'm not just making the change for the sake of change. How's birthday? It's okay. It's okay. Thank you. Wish. Good morning, good afternoon, good day. Hope you're well. Yeah. Okay. So, I've been considering why I've been doing this, what I've been doing, what I'm changing, what benefits it brings. And the way I'm looking at it so far is basically what it identified was I had a kind of smell, right? I had some associated data that didn't have kind of a source entity. So I couldn't track its changes cleanly. I don't think it's going to be the final time. I don't think this is always the solution. I think in this case, there's such a tight association with a user or a team member that it does make sense. That being said, we're gonna proceed down the path. We're gonna see if we can figure this out. So the problem we're gonna have here is I'm about to change this to need user, and that's fine. That is fine. So entity by identifier spec. That's that. Yeah. And then this is all this, basically. Like I'm listening to the I'm listening to a little voice that's basically saying this was too difficult. It required too much extra magic that wouldn't have made sense. Therefore, now it makes sense to move this around. So before, had I tried to track a version, what would I track the version against? Would it have benefited me to do that? And even if I was using date, right? Even if I had decided, okay, well, I'll just use the date of the event, what was I tracking that against? Where was I storing that? How was I managing that? Right now, I am going to have to track the version of the user. However, it does keep this a little cleaner. I put my ID in, it smells like massive splinters nearby. Been watching you saw some turtles. Let's just make sure everything both. And all the red squiggles and stuff. That's just because the rider's not quite right with itself. I believe that'll make it reassess. No, still a bit confused. So by putting this in tenant management, I do need to change the gateway. Just the configuration. And this just needs to go to the tenant management cluster. So users teams just needs to go to there. That's where I've moved it. Now, this still doesn't fix anything, right? Because I still don't have a version concept yet. So now I have a new problem. And that new problem is when morning daughter, when I am updating this, how do I update my user? Right. So I can pull the user in. I can load the user up. I can update their ID, their version, right? But now how do I make that? Hi Martin, how you doing? One of the hoops I've jumped through this entire time has been around the concept of kind of forcing protection of the data, right? So if I whack a version on here, right, I put version in there, and now it's hidden behind that. You know, it doesn't make sense to do that. What does it do? So one way I have of doing this, and it might actually be the most the cleanest way of doing this. This is the class in the code or the message coming into the code. This is the class. This is the actual user. I need to make sure I increment the version when I save it. But obviously, right now, I have no concept of this. So two things are going to change. This behavior of assigning teams is going to move into the user because it's going to be the user owns its association with its teams. So this will force the user to change, right? It's still going to go in a domain service, but it's just a team assignment service. This will force the user to change. The way I'm thinking about it is rather than make that an explicit action of incrementing the version and potentially losing track of that, because that's not easily tested later, what I'm thinking to do is use my favorite thing, which is interceptors. And as I'm saving it, increment its version. What happens is that rolls back for some reason, and I don't increment the version. It loads out, and everything works still. Same as last updated. Okay, my favorite new toy with Entity Framework is using interceptors to layer on behavior. Now the problem I have with this is it's magic, right? It's pure magic. You don't know about it happening, right? So if you're just looking at the code, if you're just looking at the code, and I have public void update associated teams, enumerable period teams, right? If I just have that, and I add domain event, user teams updated, right? That's great and all, but you don't see that this gets incremented. And the reason I'd want to do that is because I don't want to. Several changes that trigger domain events shouldn't necessarily increment the version every time. If I say, oh, well, when I mark it as verified, I update the version. When I update the details, I update the version. When I update the associated teams, I update the version. And I do all three of them in one particular transaction. The version shouldn't jump 3. It's only been saved back once. The domain events are not related to this current save of the user. So what I'm thinking to do is create a version incrementer, create a similar to last updated, create another interceptor that is then attached. The domain wouldn't increment the version, only the DB. Yes. On save of the thing. So the concept is there. But yeah. Not necessarily the repository layer. This is beyond the repository layer. I represent it in the domain object. It's just updating it is only necessary when you actually save it back to the database, which is truth, right? I think the problem there is that if I try and align it to who owns what there, then I'm going to end up in a bigger mess. So this is about to change. This stuff, this teams change is going to be updated. This will be the user that does this piece now. Yeah. I don't see any cleaner way of doing that wouldn't be prone to failure. Or if I call multiple things on the entity to update data on the entity, then I end up with the version incremented 3 times, which isn't terrible, but it's not necessarily the truth. The version didn't change 3 times. So at least if I come up with a consistent design, that means that the version can't be ignored. Because you could create a new piece of code and not update the version, and then you've got a problem because then integration events don't work, and you're trying to track that down. So this will become user. This removes away. Only the create new method in that service saves it to the DB. Create new. Pause version target when I start to figure out version 4 here. And you assign user to teams. Well, right now, these will create the save. They'll get rolled up into a transaction. It's hard to see. Hey, Connie, how you doing? But right now, I'm thinking this is the cleanest. The good news is I really don't need to create the domain service anymore because this is a very simple thing that's done on the entity. I did this similar thing with planning. Yeah, this is the same sort of thing. So basically, what we do is have associate teams, and then we'd have team identifiers. That's that. Oh, that's that. And then we'd have how do we associate teams? That it's just yeah, associate project, virtual. Why is create new association in the service layer and not the repository? Because my repository is generic. My repository is not an if all the behavior of how you do things goes into your repository, is that not your service? What? Create new associations. Right now it's this, but it's all going to go away in a second. This service is probably not going to live for much longer because it'll go in the application layer because the domain entity deals with what it needs to deal with. This is just figuring out, should I remove any team identifiers? Or just stuff that I've like save and add, which, yeah. It's just, there's no team identifiers to create new. So return false. So ultimately, by the way, this goes away, right? Because this is all replaced now by user equals repository dot first to default async new. That can't just be that though. It doesn't do a validation check. It just determines whether it needs to. So what I just did here is I moved the code that will deal with the associated teams into my user, right? So team identifiers, that'll be that. dot team identifier. I wonder if the difference is right. And then associate teams dot. Oh wow, I use the accept there. Awesome. I forgot that existed. And then it's figuring out yeah. Yeah. We're not in. User identifier equals identifier. No. That's dangerous. Let's be explicit there. That gets confusing. So this will do the add remove, and then it'll do the publish. Right. If teams to add any. Right. Yeah. So then this will change to load the user and save the user, which at this point, the domain service is kind of redundant when all this code is not necessary, right? Because the entity itself will figure it out. When I was in the for each add item scenario, I had a repository at the list level. Yeah. So I don't need that, right? Which means this is technically unnecessary. The tests aren't totally unnecessary, but yeah. So now I don't need this. I don't need domain services configuration. I don't need that. And the reason I'm getting rid of the domain service is because it would just be a layer for the sake of a layer. The entity itself can deal with the object, with the behavior now. I just need to make sure the association's there. So here, I just need to replace this with a repository of user. Right. Should be the right. Yeah. And now in this, I can do await user equals, what am I doing? Var user equals await repository dot first to default async new user by, see if I do the include on that now. So no, but I do need tracking. So include. So I'm going to make sure I do the load on that now. All right. That gives me a user with the teams associated with it. I then do user.associate teams. Command team identifies. Now this assumes that what's being passed in is it assumes that what's being passed in is the current state and not just, it's not adding anything. It's not saying, hey, add these teams associated with these new teams. it's saying this is the current state of this user. Um, argument. Okay. So that's why there's no need for the domain service now, because this is doing what it needs to do. I just need to validate, how do I make sure this saves? Because technically these ads will change that associated object. I might need to explicitly save the right. Tell me I don't use it. Oh, assign dependencies. Repository. Do I not update dependencies yet? Oh yeah, that's why. Okay. So we will need to just in here just call await repository the update async. That'll flush those changes out to the DB. So with that done, we do need to make one other change, and that is, where are you referenced? 244 times. Yeah, that's not a futile effort. We need to go and get planning, domain infrastructure configurations, pan item configuration. Here we go. So we have to set up user to have that associated teams with one uh, that's not correct. That would be bad. They don't have foreign key IDs. There's the GUIDs, because there's not meant to be that many relationships. That's the problem with this one. So I just got to get my brain around. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, that's the right way. So associated teams, if I go to comment, why do you keep turning on microphone? I think my work laptop's on. The microphone keeps turning on. Okay. So I do join on the identifier. Okay. So team associations. There's public user public team. Actually, that doesn't have any bearing now. user has principal key identifier, has foreign key identifier. So that will give me the join between those two objects. So now I can do this. We are going to need. So this is where I get a little bit messy because right now I'm not testing the domain entities, right? But my subject now is technically user, right? And I still want to validate that when I assign entities to it, it's going to work. Yeah. I'm not sure my brain's going to figure that out right this second. So how do I do this? This is concerning assigning. We're going to flip it to user, right? I'm going to comment this out right this second because I want to validate the behavior, which is ironic considering my testing, but one thing is that most of these tests are still valid. They just now change their subject to user, not to the service, right? So they're not testing the service, they're testing that the user behavior does exactly what it's expected to do. However, because I don't want to go down that path right this second, I'm going to just make sure everything builds properly. Because I want to focus more on this. So what I'm thinking is we have an interface that has a uint version. How you track it is not really a concern. And this interface is going to have to live down here. Right. That lives in Foundation, so it's a core component of the application. Then we create another interceptor. Right. This is essentially the last updated. And on saving changes, where entity state modified and to do this, I don't have to do yes, that's just going to do version +1. However, there's going to be a slight change there. So now that entity is going to be wrong, right? Because I don't want it implements the interface from the version perspective, but it didn't implement the method. So we're going to create a public abstract class versioned entity base int. This does not amuse tooling. The abstract classes, etc. There's a tooling complains about it. That's going to have to do the same behavior, right? So that would be version and public. So now that becomes that. That gets there. That gets removed. Now we don't have to keep creating that method on every object we create. We can just create a version entity base and know that it's going to track a version against itself. Hold on, version entity base. Why is it not entity base though? It inherits from entity base. Why can't it be entity base? That's annoying. Do I really? I think that breaks everything. Yeah, entity base. Where T entity is class I entity. No. Then just do that. Type I entity. Oh, okay. It's safe. It's not. Problem with this style though is no, because I have user. I can do this. Builder.property p goes to p.version. The problem is I'm going to have to deal with that. Okay. I'm not going to panic about this. Morning, Duca. Oh, good afternoon, Duca. It feels okay. I'm not trying to prevent any other developer working in the code from doing anything. I'm just trying to make it very simple and transparent, and not transparent, actually very obscure. But it shouldn't be something we have to worry about every time we do code, because that sort of thing, if we need the version to increment, the version should be incrementing. We shouldn't have to worry about, did I increment it? Is there a bug somewhere? Once the behavior is working, I can trust the behavior and rely upon that versioning as a concept. So there's one other area I need to change here. Extensions, service collection extensions. Do I add? I think I just add the versioning by default. Um, provider, get required service. Okay, so when we're dealing with domain events, we add a special context, and that adds the actual interceptors into it. So that's done by default. Now, again, like I said, I was starting to say before, right? Hey, Redrum, how you doing? This sort of stuff is it's difficult, and as much as I don't like the magic, I think it's much better than the repetitive and error-prone nature of having to remember to apply the version, having to remember to change the version, having the system version it for you will help. So now, and yes, I know I haven't tested this. What we need to do is in our publisher, our user publisher, we need to introduce the version field. And let's see if we get associated teams to do the right thing. Yeah. Start that. Start that. So this will work for everything like planning items, for um, tasks, for comments, even for yeah, this will work for most core entities. Basically, the smell here was by not having this associated with the user in this way, I was making it more difficult to trace this through the system. This isn't finished, by the way, because I still need to add those teams in there. Ooh, specify for you. Yeah, we kind of need the version field on the user, don't we? So now, user modify table. Again, sadly, MySQL SQL Server does not support reordering of columns, so you can't insert a column after another one. MySQL supports that, and I think Postgres supports that, but SQL Server does not. So this will be version. It's still int. I immediately wanted to go to that. No. care about that. Choosing the right data type. Is UI all done with it? I don't think my UI will ever be done. The latest version of Liquid Sky is live though, so this is the current version of Liquid Sky running. Uh, so all good. Yeah, I suppose it's just int. No, begin is long. One sec, it's still be integer. Not null default. Actually, let's just default one. That's more accurate. Okay, so script this column. Uh, uh, management, user team associations. New file. To user version.sql. Uh, let's actually do this. User integration event. Oh, I do have it on there. I just don't publish it. Okay. User publisher. Um, teams equals user dot associate teams dot select s dot team identifier. Let's try that. So I'm trying to work on right now is dealing with the assigned teams, but when I get to this, I was decided to tackle a bit more idempotency. Um, I don't know, maybe it's just me, but all I see what is being done with signals is moving away from some decorators and others into more procedural approach. Basically saying that potato is a vegetable doesn't make potato less vegetable. um, specify field version could not be found for property user version. Did I make it private? I made it private, didn't I? Our problem was not one of the field, it was one of the object. Uh, user version entity base. Yeah, don't make them private. Yeah. Signals are still something that I'm trying to wrap my head around. I just hope over time with more exposure to the tooling, depending on, you know, the focus time, that I can actually get to sit down and understand a bit more about them. Right now I'm just completely all over the place with so many different things that it's I'm just kind of making it up as I go along. Some are just basically getter inside properties in one. Yes. Yeah. I do utilize the signal uh when I add the task here, I utilize the signal to tell the UI to update when that changes, which works pretty nice. So the list updating here, these are disconnected components, this list, this screen, and this pop-up. And I didn't want the responsibility of the pop-up to be to update the list. And I didn't want, so the list updates itself, which is very much by design. So some use. That's kind of like uh, on property changed in .NET. Forms are also moved to signals. Yeah, I don't know. Guess we shall see. Okay, so ultimately the goal will be to go in here and assign the teams in here, right? I do want to make it in a separate call, so it's not going to be the same. When you hit save here, it will do multiple saves. I don't want to just do all update all user with everything, right? Right now we don't have that endpoint wired up in the UI, so directories are a bit broken. I should go. Yeah, I mean, I don't think I know enough about Angular to really be opinionated about what's functional and what's not. I mean, I will say that there's such a mix of techniques in the UI code that I'm not sure what the right path is, what the right thing to do is. You know, um, again, learning there would be beneficial. What was I doing? Oh yeah, I was bringing up insomnia. So this should go to the right endpoint. What do you mean? You did all that code and it didn't work first time? Preposterous. User team associations. Oh, you mean you didn't create the table? No, I did. I did. I did create the table. I know I created the table. Did I not? Okay, clearly not. Oh, did I put that back in organization management? Dear. Only I had a clue what I was doing. This belongs in tenant management. Do, do, do. There you go. So does that actually work now? Unable to cast objects of type int32 to system int64. So that is a big int. Oh, can I drop the column? version, big int, not null, default 1. There we go. Okay, so now 3 user associations, users. Version 2, Fred. There you go. Now the problem is, anytime I update that object now, it's going to figure that. So if I update again, I'm going to get version 3. Yeah. Even if I don't publish anything to Kafka, that is going to work that way, isn't it? I think that might be I have to deal with that side effect right this second. I have to deal with that as a necessary evil at this point. Show record view. Value. Teams is empty. That's disappointing. Because I'm pretty sure. Oh. Does that mean Teams wasn't empty in this one? No, Teams was empty in this one. How did I publish version 2 twice? I published it twice. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Well, I know about that. I know why that is. I flipped the logic. So what happened then was, if I add it again, I should get it back, but I still won't get this because okay. So when you let's close organization management. When I go to save something, only on successful save of that object to the database will it publish the domain events. Those domain events then go and pull data from the database. The problem is what they pull is not the version reflected because it technically hasn't completed yet. No, that's technically incorrect. It's the tracking inside of Entity Framework hasn't finished what it was doing yet. So if I query that immediately, I get the previous version, right? Even though it was saved. The other thing, the fact that the teams disappeared, was a bug. That's because I just flipped the logic in the wrong place and didn't think about it or bother with those tests because it's more focused on this. What I need to do is, the interesting thing here is if I do it this way, now I will publish a user updated event, then I'll publish a user teams updated event. Might need to do a decon, on the outbots. I might need to do a, am I bothering with the same entity? And if I am, condense that so that I don't create a load of noise unnecessarily in the system. It's not a lie, but it's messy. But anyway, that's not what they're going to do. So, not planning. Why am I in planning? In the application here, in the subscribers, user teams updated. This uses entity by identifier spec. This isn't what I need because I'm not going to get the user team. So I'm always going to publish empty because it's not going to include that navigational thing. User updated also gets entity by identifier spec, which is fine, except it's going to get the version from the change tracking, from the entity framework in the cache, not from the database, which has now been flushed with the commit, which is why I put the interceptor after saved to publish the domain events, so that I know that the database has the data. It's a security mechanism. What I need to do here now is create a specification. User with permissions. User with details. No tracking spec. I'm still playing around with what a name should look like for this, but what this should do, user, is period identifier. This will be query dot where u identifier equals identifier. But what we'll do is we'll include right. It may be that I end up not doing the node tracking specs. I think you can still use them on the other side. So you can say, I don't want to track, which means I can use the same spec for multiple things. But here now I want to do that, right? Yeah, I think. Oh, no, as no tracking. Can I do it that way? Yeah, I think there's a way of specifying it here, but I just don't know. Okay, let's apply those changes. That's fine. Services. Brain. Hello, services. And we will restart tenant management. He says it's not actually running. It is. Oh yeah, there it is. There it is. Restarting it through the Aspire host because I think the change should go through. So what that'll do now, I need to do the same change on the user, but what that'll do is it should now publish teams because it'll include the navigation properties and yeah, there's my associations. There's my user. My user's 4. That's pretty much correct. Now, if we go to the notification outbox, we should see right at the end of the notification outbox that we got another user teams updated event. that got published and processed. And there's our integration event, and our teams are empty still. Why are our teams empty still? But version 4 published. The intent there, by the way, this event type or event source is very much intended so you are able to tell the source of this particular event triggered. Teams should not be empty though. That's a bad idea. I don't think I need that or that anymore because I'm removing them. I'm not changing the team to which a user is identified via that, so I don't need an identifier column. It doesn't need to be an entity base, basically. Let's stop this running. Oh, no, don't start again. That's good. Ah, the code didn't take, that's fine. Oh. Yes. That would have been better. So can I now do as no track? No, still can't set no as no tracking, even with it as an interface. So the spec is the set as no tracking. Okay. Well, so that might have worked. But what we'll do is this one. Again, we want to make sure we get the same object, different events. And the concept here is one of if other things need to happen, if other changes, if I update the user and I need things to happen after updating the user, let's say I need to send an email or push a notification to an endpoint or something like that, those can happen in here, but they don't happen in here, right? They don't become a piece of this behavior. So all these application handlers are concerned with is, can I save the data? The data I need to save, not do I need to do extra pieces around it. So that logic is, or those side effects are reactive rather than a core component, which does mean these are cleaner. Okay, so let's try that again. Now I know that I wasn't paying attention to the actual code I was writing. See where this goes. I'll start up. Unable to save settings. We're having a day with this one. We're actually having a week with this one. This is just challenging all around. Okay, let's try that once more. So now, when I publish that, I think my bug is going to take effect here. I think my bug means that that's going to wipe out those associations, yes. So then this message version 5 is going to have an empty teams as well. But if I publish that again, was version 6. Hey, version 6 has teams. Version 7 would definitely not have teams. Okay, so we have we have versioning and we have some level of team integration there. So that's a lot of changes. Foundation gets new interceptor, update extension, new base types. I think at this point it's time to oh no, they're all type entity based. That's fine. Entity base. That is the entity base. Let's do move to another file. Versioned entity base. Right. I don't want to hide that from a glance of the code. Okay, so introduce version entity concept. Base type. Interceptor. So the thing that I was worried about initially, of incrementing the version unnecessarily, is still a very high likelihood, right? You could jump from version 5 to version 8 and there'll only be seemingly one change in between. Right now, I think it'll be okay, but we'll see. Yeah, let's see how that goes. Shift user team associations. Amendment. Now I know I'm committing a bug here. I'm going to go back and fix the test. I just want to make sure that I'm on a clean slate and that all this work is not messed up by further messing around. As user now understands. Push. Continue. Push. Okay, so with that done, let's go back and fix those tests. The tests are still valid on the domain, right? The behavior is still valid. I'm not even going to try and look at the code that I tweaked, broke, before I do this. Associate teams, and that is going to be that, and that is going to be that. And now we just need to override that, and we're good there. And this is going to be user, and this is going to be new identifier equals, needs a little bit more now. Expected user identifier. Associated teams equals that, equals new list. Association. Let's see if that runs. Actually, that's not that. That'll be, that won't matter. What we're checking here is removing all teams. So actually, we need to do that. There's no repository. We do need to know that that happened. So the event subject dot domain events dot of type user teams updated dot count is 1. And this is subject associated teams is empty, right? So I'm going to set up a user, blank user, and then I'm going to call associate teams with an empty array on it, and then validate that it removes the teams. What's a count mismatch? That's because user requires a bit more. Oh, because user requires email and name at least. I need at least the constructor properties. Name equals user, email equals email. The values don't matter. There you go. So if we pass in an empty array, it will clear the associated teams. So I just need to make those changes when user is assigned to all teams. Right. So in this scenario, what I'm doing is I'm validating that if I pass in the same list of teams, I do not publish an event. Right. So similar thing here. We just need to do that. Right. Then our tests are no user teams event is queued, and our subject is user. We have no need for publisher. Actually cleans this up quite a lot. That doesn't validate that. Count. There's one. There you go. So we have one team attached. We pass in the same team identifier. We only expect there to be one team for that, and we don't expect there to be any events queued because there's no changes essentially. I think this one will break. I think this one removes it. Expected 0, actual 1. So we queued the thing. User team associations are not created. Expected 1, actual 0. It's interesting. Oh yeah, because I removed it. And I queued one. So I expected no event and I got one. And I expected there to be one team and there was 0. Because that bug. So I'll go to user. And this is it. Teams to remove. So we pass in a list of team identifiers. Actually, that's a weird behavior. I don't care about that. I'll leave that there for now. It's not going to harm anything. It's just kind of a lie in the API. So for associated team where the identifier is coming in, oh, there's our bug. There we go. There's our bug. Comparing the wrong field. Is that healthier? So I'm just going to repeat this, get these tests in place. Again, the tests are valid. There's no question in my mind that the tests are useful here. No, user. And okay, so this one is when team is no longer assigned, when user is no longer assigned to a team. So there's our existing, let's do a bit of a copy and paste here because it's just going to slow me down to keep doing this. There's our existing, and then we're going to that's a bit of a distinction. So an existing one, and we're passing in a new one, right? We have that. So now we have an existing team, and we're passing in a new one. User teams assigned event is queued, so we do need this one. Right. New user team association is created and the existing one is removed. So essentially that's this code. Existing team identifier, and then we repeat the same for expected. Right. Uh-oh. User team association is removed. Oh, look. Expected one. Because we don't expect a test. We don't expect that to exist anymore. And then when users are not assigned to any team, when users are not assigned to any teams, users associated. That's kind of a redundant test. We've validated that if we have a team that's not there, let's just rename this when no team associations. Let's just do, I mean, it's essentially let's copy this test. Take me 2 minutes to figure it out. So our range is essentially that, but with no value set. Act is this. Right. And our Test is this and this. I don't doubt it'll work, but all with testing is that if we have no teams already there, that we don't throw anything out and yeah. Set of tests. There you go. Okay. Correct behavior on user to removing teams to match against. Again, I don't think that identifier field is, it's not hurting anything, but identifier and last updated, even date added doesn't really make sense. That doesn't give you much value from the team perspective. We don't publish that information. It's an internal tracking field only. Yeah. Correct behavior on user for removing teams to match against team event. There we are. Against user. Now, previously that was in a domain service. However, that behavior now belongs to the user, right? The team cannot be associated with the user any other way. So essentially it is a domain service. In my mind. I was reading an excerpt the other day about domains, about organization of this code, clean code. I think I mentioned it the other day. Not quite sure how I would rearrange this differently. But I think that does go into pushing us down design paths sometimes. How we organize the code sometimes forces us down rationalizations. Okay, so let's run this again, validate those tests, and then we can go and finally get the view side started. 3 days behind schedule. If you are new to the stream, if you are interested in what I'm doing, more than welcome to ask any questions. If you have any opinions on what I'm doing, if you think I'm wrong, I am happy to talk through stuff. A lot of this comes from a conversation that we had on Monday around versioning. And after discussing it, pushing back initially, discussing it a little bit more, thinking more about the benefits versus the costs, I feel it is the right direction to head the software in. It's just taken me this long to figure out how I want to achieve that thing. And I think it kind of helped me identify a potential smell on that side. So if we send this now, we should have 3 team associations. We shouldn't publish any event. Thought that was a command then. I'm like, okay, I'll get right on that. Oh dear. If you're not aware of Canny is a great developer, and has an amazing entertaining stream. Often has guests on there, and Yeah. Built an amazing library called Twitcher, which if you're a Godot dev doing streaming, I can't see why you wouldn't consider using. Even as a non-Godot dev doing streaming, I am thinking about things I could learn and utilize it for. I do have some dreams of doing Liquid Sky related stuff inside of the stream, and I think that would help. Okay, so that did not publish a change, right? This, however, should publish a change. There's our event saying, yep, things changed. I almost swore then. Version 8 now has 2 teams. There we go. Let's put that one back. Then that. Version 9 should have 3 teams. There we go. Version 9. Okay. Phew. Well, that took a while, didn't it? But we now have the ability to version other objects. I'm not going to go through that on every object right this second, but as new changes come around, there's something I need to consider. Wi-Fi high five. Yeah, I'm not going to try that. Okay, so we have the concept of a version on user at least. So now we move to the view side. On the view, we are going to need a similar. Oh, actually, hold on. Before I do that, I have one more change to make. Columns. User version. It's a big int, not an int. Soft. Shout out to Duca. Duca manages to stream. It is an amazing time. Streams drone footage and sorry. My brain's just diverted on me. I think we might. All good. Let's make the database changes for user on the view side, and then I think we'll finish up there for today. Users. So on this side, we need to have a version now, right? Because we need to know that the version we're pulling in is different to the version. Version. Big int, not null. We're gonna set default 1. Everything should be 1. Now we don't need to expose this down to the client at this point. There's no need to. There's an internal field. Sorry, I got. View. So we don't need it. We don't need it attached to any of the actual views. 002. I call it there. User version. 002 add user version.sql. Whoa. No, I want the column. It's important that I remember to no, it's fine. It's fine. It's fine. Yeah, technically I need to make some changes anyway. So add user version. Yeah. Use version. Uh, update type. Begins internet management. Introduce column in commit and push. So, the next step here is to, on the view side now, is to take that user and deal with the teams. Don't forget the user event will come in with the teams. I'm not inclined to do this. In other areas, I've kind of created multiple handlers here to receive the different parts of the data so that they have a specific purpose. In this scenario, I'm not entirely sure that I want to handle this differently, because now this version gives me another problem. If I was to do this part first, right, in this user receiver, let's say I do update user, and then I do update team. I now have to make sure that I don't check the version incorrectly, because the version coming in of this one, yeah. So the version check might end up in the receiver somehow as kind of an idempotency check on the thing before I do anything else. Because then if I move it down into the code, that becomes messy and repetitive. I might have to deal with how do I do that here. It's possible, but yeah. But that, unfortunately, will have to wait until tomorrow. There's no way I'm going to get that progress made today, and I need to think about the design, right? This obviously understands that it has a version, but I don't have the concept of a versioned integration event now. I just have a version, right? So this one needs to, I need to figure out what I'm going to do there. Like, I think the receiver actually starts to become the real place to do that, because then I'm not pushing that logic down into the individual things. If they get called, they should save the data. Basically what I'm looking to do is say, if version not equal to is greater than or equal to event.version, i.e. we've processed this event already, then returned, right? So a validation there will be much cleaner and much easier to repeat, because you will, anytime you go to a receiver, the entry point of a receiver, you'll be able to just put the version check in there, have it work. The challenge with that is, I can get away with this. I can query that information. That's not my challenge. Um, again, my thought process here is very much around repeatability, consistency in how I'm doing that check. And if I have to add this piece in every single time, it's something that can be forgotten. It's something that can be missed, and it's something that someone can go, oh well, I'll just, you know, if I say, hey, you need to add a version check in, they put it in the update user or they put it in the update whatever, and that check doesn't apply everywhere, then it becomes um, risky, because once this sort of data starts going out of whack, it becomes much more difficult to trace it down where a problem actually is. So more effort has to be put into the quality of that information. Um, so I'm going to put some thought into that overnight. Um, ideally, have some sort of validator here that would say okay, um, are you the correct version? Like have a version validator that would say, okay, for this entity, here's my validator, um, and be able to not even call this receiver if the validation isn't true. And that way there's a nice clean layer of validators. So yeah. Anyway, that being said, we are going to uh, go see Moonies. Moonies is developing a actual work game, a geography game, which is I don't get to watch when I immediately read all the time, so um, but I would highly recommend checking them out. It is Wednesday as well. Do not forget if you are interested in .NET development. Um, One Line is also a .NET streamer and streams Wednesday through Friday. Um, is a fantastic streamer to go and hang out with, and yeah, I need to do better at schedule. Developers are stream idea, stream schedules. uh, for the API. Um, yes. So anyway, One Line streams in about 3.5 hours. No worries, One Line. Thank you very much for joining me. Thank you very much for your support as always. But anyway, let's go raid Moonies. Moonies is a nice chill streamer, and I will catch you again tomorrow. And see you later. Thanks all. Bye.